Hello everybody. So Bitcoin deserves credit is the theme of this video, and it is of course the theme of the buy flag of Sailor today, the title Bitcoin deserves credit, obviously a nod to the preferred and the business of a preferred, perhaps indicating that the preferreds did very well this week, and maybe he issued a lot of these preferreds this week as people are anticipating a rate cut next week, right? We're getting that rate cut in just 3 days now, and so people are very excited. Maybe they're anticipating that the preferreds of strategy will increase and rise as rate cuts are announced. Either way, I hope that he did a mad use. I'm going to use the term mad use of the common ATM. I hope he used a lot of the common ATM today to buy more Bitcoin. Not today, but this entire past week, these past 5 trading days, I hope he really used the ATM. And the chart would suggest that he did, because if you look at strategy is only up 1% over the past 5 days, while Bitcoin itself is up 4%. So strategy is clearly underperforming Bitcoin over a 1 week period, and it's been like that for a few weeks now, maybe even a few months, depending on the time frame you look at. But as I've always said with strategy, you should not look just a few months away. If you do that, if you look at a few months, you are a trader. You are not an investor. The right way to judge strategy is to look at the long-term annualized returns. You can see he has them at 91%. It is more than Nvidia, more than Tesla, more than any of the Max 7. MSTR has outperformed the Max 7 over a 5-year period. These numbers work out, right? When I go on my own investment calculator and I input the date where strategy started acquiring Bitcoin in August of 2020, right? And I input the last trading day, what do I get? I get 90%, 90.25% average annual return every year for the past 5 years versus Bitcoin at only 48%. And of course, I use GBTC because the ETFs came later, right? GBTC was the only thing available back in the 2020s. So for comparison, I include a GBTC. So you see the performance of MSTR over a 5-year period as more than outperformed Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin did a 7x, MSTX did a 26x. 26x versus 7x your money in 5 years, right? MSTR was clearly the better trade on the only period that matters, and that period is the long-term investment period. At least that is my view. If you don't do options, that's the period that matters. If you're not a trader, that's the period that matters. Speaking of options, really briefly, a high open interest signifies that people tend to have a strong interest in the underlying asset. People love to trade the underlying asset. The asset is not toxic. The asset is alive. And if you look at open interest and where to rank the most alive stocks out there, you can see that MSTR is more alive than Tesla. And sure enough, I mean, Tesla has been the story of the stock market of the past 10 years, right? And MSTR is more of a story, although it doesn't have a longer streak of business performance. Tesla has a longer streak of business performance, but Nvidia, Tesla, these are very interesting stocks of the 2020s. And MSTR, in my view, is one of these stocks. It's one of these companies that is one of these leading companies in this new world of Bitcoin. And it's obviously, Tesla is pretty darn misunderstood, but MSTR is obviously extremely misunderstood because they don't sell products to consumer. They sell common stock to investors. Their main product is the common stock. They sell common stock to investors instead of selling, products to people. And that's what people don't get about MSTR, because it flips the entire book. It goes against every understood way of finance, right? It goes against everything an MBA would be taught at school, right? So people really dislike it, but they should try it a little harder to walk through the common ATM math. Like I've made a video multiple times. I've talked about the common ATM math. Just do the math. right? At a 1.5 mNAV, you actually make money. You have 30% margin on each MSTR shares that you print at a 1.5 mNAV. That's a 30% margin. Anyways, he announced this week, this flew under the radar, but there are options on preferreds. So this is pretty amazing. I mean, I know very little about I knew very little about preferred stocks before Sailor. I actually did not know there were options on preferreds. You can have options on preferreds. Think about that. You can have options on an asset that is like based on another asset, which is MSTR, which is itself based on Bitcoin. So you're really creating an entirely new financial infrastructure. I'm very curious to see what people are going to do with these options on those preferred. But I know if the options interest becomes high on the preferred, that could trigger interest for these preferred equities, and that could make those preferred equities go up because people want to own the preferred because all of a sudden they could become more attractive if they are more volatile. Why could they become more attractive if they are more volatile? Because you could earn more money by selling covered calls, right? The retirees, this is a classic playbook that by so many retirees, they go ahead and they sell super low delta, covered calls, and in like 98% of the cases, they end up collecting the money, typically pennies, but pennies that can add up, right? You could potentially, these are going to be very low volatility, right? The preferreds are very low vol, but you could potentially add, 3%, 5% extra yield selling covered calls by taking very little risk. And so I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic that may actually increase the price of the calls. And you can see the volume is so low. This is so new, right? This is 3 days old, but you can see you can already sell a covered call, for example, on Stretch. You can sell a $100 call. So you agree to let go your shares at $100 in December 19. And if you agree to that, then, well, I guess the midpoint would be 35 cents. You make 35 cents times 100 per contract that you sell on your 100 shares of underlying Stretch that someone would own. Not a very good yield, but again, there's not enough demand right now for us to judge that. We can't really judge that right now. It's like we need to see more demand to actually get the true prices of that, and that's going to take time. These things take time. Volume takes time to build up, and of course I definitely wouldn't do it right now because in my view Stretch is going to 100 in my view, but that could be very interesting, especially if Stretch stays within a range. It could be quite interesting. So anyways, I'm excited to see what this means. So like I said, Bitcoin deserves credit. It deserves these credit instruments, and it deserves the options on the credit instrument. That's interesting stuff to me. Back to the tailwinds, and we'll conclude with that. I see two tailwind number one and number two. The tailwind number one is Bitcoin going back up. As I've said before, Bitcoin needs to do well in order for MSTR to do well. Sure, we bounce back a little bit on Bitcoin, but Bitcoin hasn't been doing too well either. We in my view, we're going to have another all-time high, and that's kind of what we need, another all-time high for excitement to come back in the market. Because whenever Bitcoin hits a new all-time high, it also gets a worldwide advertising campaign because every single news outlet report Bitcoin hit, I don't know, next time is like 125, Bitcoin hit 125. That will be a worldwide news. That will feed the frenzy. People will be excited about the bull market. People will be excited about the liquidity coming back this September, coming back this fall. So that's what I think. And of course, Sailor, I hope, will keep selling common equity into strength, because at the mNAV of 1.49 right now, you still make, roughly a 30% margin, on each U share that you sell. But over time, and as the options market on the preferred develop, as more preferreds perhaps are introduced, as preferreds are sold in the open market, right, via these ATMs, over time, I think it's the perpetual preferreds that will be the tailwind, the next tailwind, into 27, 28, 2028. This will be the next tailwind. And why are they a tailwind? Of course, because they are perpetual, and perpetual means forever. You don't need to pay them back. You just need to pay the yield on them forever, and you get the arbitrage. And I think the feeling, the BTC torque, right, the accretion of the preferreds will be particularly felt in the coming years as Bitcoin goes up, right? But the yield stays the same. And that's, I think, the arbitrage opportunity is going to be the big thing. It's like, yeah, you have preferreds that were used to buy Bitcoin. And of course, you expect 29% return on the Bitcoin. And out of that 29% return on the Bitcoin, you give out an 8% yield. And so that's where some people say, well, he should really sell the Bitcoin to pay that 8% yield. I say no way in the world he should do that. He should use the margins on the ATM, on the common ATM, selling the common shares to pay that yield. Or, and this is also something that he has done, and that I think the conversation will move towards, is that you produce a yield if you issue at a price to par higher than 100. If you sell a preferred equity for $130, but the par is 100, you make $30, and that $30 can be used to pay the yield. So that's also just straight money that you can use to pay that yield. There's a lot of things that Saylor can do, and I so look forward to see what's going to happen with MSTR. Love this stock very much. This stock has been a life changer for me, for many of us. Now it looks like Tesla's bouncing, so maybe give it a couple months. Maybe Tesla will be the number one position again. We'll see. But this stock has been an amazing stock in my view. I know people are upset, but the people are upset this because if you bought at 450, yeah, maybe you're upset, but it's a short-lived upsetness. Like, it's a short-lived upsetness in my view. I've sat on losses for years, and sometimes you gotta wait for the asset to go back up, right, to bounce back up, and you have to be willing to sit for years and wait. And people have no patience in this world of instant social media, instant gratification. People, unfortunately, have no patience, and it's sad. And frankly, Bitcoiners should have patience, right? Time preference, safe books, all of that. We should have low time preference, but unfortunately that's not the way it works. So, not investment advice. This was not financial advice. This is just entertainment. Hoping you were entertained. Please please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.